plans in the country, except tonight I'm wondering how strategic it could be to have a meeting on the same night as a Kansas-Missouri basketball game. Right? Told Bill I'd say that. I'd like for you to meet Dr. Keith Marty, who's a new superintendent. He's been a principal, he's been a curriculum assistant superintendent, and he's been a superintendent. He's had lots of good experience. The board members all called 2 or 3 references each, and I was able to sit and listen to the results of what people said about Dr. Marty in his school district. Some of them said they cried when they heard he was going to leave, so I think we have a really special person. He has done some tough jobs like changing boundary lines, and so we're glad to have you here to help us do that. And but he doesn't do snow days, right? So did you have any this year? One snow day this year in Wisconsin. The superintendent of Clayton's kids work in Evanston, Illinois. They're teachers at Evanston High School. They had their first 2 snow days in 25 years in Evanston this year. So I don't think we know how to clear snow here in St. Louis or something. So welcome to Parkway, and you want to say a few words?
Thank you. Enjoyed the day immensely. As I was going to meet the board members and Don, and I said, I wish I could stay all week. I'm just really thrilled to be here, but I do have to finish some work back in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. But this is a night I know that you really are anxious to hear about the strategic plan. I'm telling you that when I first saw that plan, and I do a little bit of facilitating a strategic plan, so I've had an opportunity to work in several districts in Wisconsin. It's a great plan. In fact, it's one of the things that really attracted me to Parkway, to have a plan that really addresses where a district needs to go, and really the biggest challenge that we face in public schools, or all schools in this nation, is to educate each and every student. That is something that we really have to be committed to. And it's a big challenge. It's an immense challenge, and it's going to take some time to be able to do that. But you have a plan that really puts that in motion, and I'm really excited to be part of that, a part of a district that's really committed to that, a board that's committed, and obviously a number of you here tonight. This is a great turnout from my view that are really committed to that plan. So I'm very excited. I hope to be at Parkway off and on over the next couple of months, and very excited to work with Don. And by the way, you are so fortunate this year to have Don Sente as your interim superintendent, who's just going to be a joy to work with. I really enjoy his wisdom and his long leadership here in the St. Louis area. So I'm very excited, and again, thank you for your commitment to kids, and I'm going to enjoy getting down here and getting to know each one of you a little bit more. Thank you very much.
We watched the Super Bowl last night with some of the area superintendents, and he got all the way through that talk without mentioning the Packers once. So, way to go. Okay, we're ready to go. Tim?
All right, well, thank you very much. I'm Tim Hudson. I'm the steering committee facilitator for Project Parkway and the math coordinator. And it's great, Dr. Marty, to have you here joining us this evening, and all of our board members. All of our board members wave. I think we got, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. So really appreciate the turnout. And if you look at your agenda, I don't know if we're running ahead of schedule. It's 7:10 yet, just about 7:10. And you'll notice there's a 50-minute black where you got to break at 8 o'clock. But until then, we're going to go through a lot of information. So feel free to get up and stretch if you need to. If you brought some of those fake glasses with the eyeballs painted on, you might want to get those ready. But this really is the culmination of a couple of years of work. Project Parkway started in February 2009. Raise your hand if you were here at that first meeting. Oh, man, we got a lot of retention. Nobody's bald. That's good. Show us your neighbor what you remember from that very first meeting. I see a few smiles of fond memories. Yes, maybe one or two smiles. I heard somebody mention the rain. I think that was the first year of Project Parkway. If it was raining, you didn't even need to look at your calendar, just go to Central High. People will be there talking about Project Parkway. So, we have a strategic plan that we're going to share with you tonight, and we really do need your input. So let me go through a few things next 50 minutes. Why is the strategic plan important? One, it's going to guide our work for the next years. It's designed to ensure we accomplish a new mission. That our mission doesn't get accomplished just by chance. We have to take deliberate action to accomplish it. From good to great, this is a quote that we've been sharing at board presentations and elsewhere. Every institution has its unique set of irrational and difficult constraints, yet some make a leap while others, facing the same environmental challenges, do not. This is perhaps the single most important point of all of good to great. Greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. That's exactly what a strategic plan is all about, conscious choice and discipline for the next 5 years. So how is it developed? The Project Parkway Steering Committee has taken all of the work related to our new mission, related to the Project Parkway work since it began 2 years ago, and compiled it into a plan that we're going to be walking through tonight and getting your feedback on. So we definitely need your ideas. The Steering Committee is a representative committee of 35, 36 members of the Parkway community, but by no means does it represent all of the expertise that is in this room and is in our Parkway community. So this is the first opportunity to take a look at it and to share your ideas, because we need your brains. Yes? Look at the person next to you and say, they need your brain. How will we know when we can say mission accomplished? That's one of our guiding questions. And how will our district goals and strategic plan for the next 5 years accomplish our mission? Those are our guiding essential questions from Grant Wiggins. Our mission, as you probably no doubt have memorized, or have we made bumper stickers yet? Is anybody on that? No, next year Paul's on that. Keychains, the whole, no. How will we know that all of our students, like Dr. Marty said, ensuring all of our students are capable, curious, and confident learners? The first job of leaders in a nonprofit institution is to turn the organization's mission statement into specifics. And that's what you're going to see tonight. The specifics of what makes a student capable, what makes a student a curious learner. How are we going to know that our students are well equipped to handle the challenges of an ever-changing world? These are our questions. How are we going to ensure they're all capable? What measurable evidence of curious learning are we going to monitor for the next 5 years? What adjustments will we make if our efforts aren't causing all students to be more confident learners? And how often are we asking students to respond to the challenges of an ever-changing world? These are questions the steering committee's been wrestling with, and we're excited to bring you in tonight to wrestle with those questions as well. Pulling from Schooling by Design, which is, of course, the book we've been using, sort of as our guiding framework. Abstract or broad goals come to life when we agree on the observable indicators we hope to see or the quantifiable measures that will enable us to gauge success. When you put in your mission statement that we're going to ensure all students are curious learners, it definitely raises some eyebrows for this very point. Would you say that's kind of an abstract, broad goal? Yeah. So what we're trying to do in our strategic plan is articulate, be very clear what the observable indicators are. How are we going to measure that success? It's challenging work, but I believe we can do it. So here is the planning backwards, the 3 stages that we are working with. First, we frame and refer to our measurable goals based on our vision, principles of learning, and appropriate standards. Then next, what is the credible evidence, and what are the indicators of success by which we're going to judge all progress? Then we draft a plan based on goals and evidence needs. So what the steering committee has done so far is really operate in these 2 areas, and we need your help on this third part. So the first stage in the design process calls for clarity about priorities expressed as achievements. If we want curious learners and capable learners, what are our priorities, and how will those display themselves in student achievement and student performance? We need to take time to clarify not just goals, but also the needed assessment evidence and initial data before we generate a detailed action plan. And this is what we do in our classrooms. This is what happened when you were taking your driver's test. You had to know what the assessment evidence, what am I going to be tested on? Parallel parking. Anybody not pass the parallel parking? We got a few. Anybody have to take it more than once? The whole driving test? We got a few. Anybody really did but aren't raising your hand? Oh, and 2 people pointed at each other, so they must know. We need to know what evidence we're going to collect before we work on the plan, which is why we need your help with so many of the strategies and action steps, because we've been working on what assessment evidence and desired results we want. So here's where we're at. Our draft comprehensive school improvement strategic plan, has 6 goals, 19 measurable objectives, and the strategies and action steps, of course, a lot of those. Here are our 6 goals. On the left-hand side, we need to accomplish our mission. We want capable learners who transfer their prior learning, curious learners who understand and respond to the challenges of an ever-changing world, and confident learners who are increasingly self-directed. Then on the other hand, we want to honor the commitments that the board has approved, which is these are 3 of the priorities for the next 5 years. Strong professional communities, exceptional staff members, and to responsibly and efficiently allocate resources. These are our priority areas in this draft. Now, all of our mission and vision indicators are important. For example, we do want our kids to be articulate speakers and effective listeners. But only a few of our mission and vision indicators can be priorities for the next 5 years. Not that we're going to keep monitoring all of them, but only those 6 were selected based on the needs we think very clearly articulated through the Project Parkway work. So if you look at that next page beneath your agenda, in your packet, you can see this little graphic describing those 3 goals. And you'll see each of these bullets, these are the measurable objectives. These are the things that, well, yes, we can measure and know how closely we are accomplishing our mission. Then if you look at the next page, you can see the commitments piece. So take a minute to read over those 2 pages. following our break at 8 o'clock, we'll have starting at 8:10, we'll have a half-hour table session where you can choose one of these 19 to go and share your input and suggest your input and discuss that goal and measurable objective with a table group. Pick one of them and that you think is interesting or that you're curious about, and tell your neighbor what makes you curious about it.
Actually, I'm very excited because this is my here. We have 40 cadet teachers in the course. Some of them are African American, and I keep telling them, here. I mean, that's what we want. So we'll come back to teach in our building. People don't look here. After life, the others are like 50. Literally parallelism. Teacher. Popping out at you?
Like the ACT popped out, but it popped out. Yeah.
Why did it pop out? All right, wrap up that thought if you would. Over the next 35 minutes, we'll be going through the rest of the packet, looking at each measurable objective briefly to help you get a better understanding of them. One thing that separates makes our strategic plan, I guess this is one thing that's informed our strategic plan from Schooling by Design. Contemporary school reform efforts typically focus too much on various means, structures, schedules, programs, PD, curriculum, and instructional practices. Certainly such reforms serve as the fuel for the school improvement engine, but they must not be mistaken as the destination, which is improved learning, which is why we have 3 goals entirely about student learning, and then 3 goals about our organization's work to accomplish that learning. So, all students are capable learners who transfer their prior learning to new demands in and out of school. We're going to go through each of these bullets just real briefly. The first one has to do with our Parkway curriculum. We want all of our students to meet or demonstrate growth toward ongoing rigorous transfer goals as measured by assessments within and across all Parkway curricular areas. How many of you have been a part of some of the conversations over the past 2 years about what is rigor in some of the Project Parkway work? See some nods, see a few hands. Okay, that's been a key conversation, so we're really going to be addressing that here. We also have been discussing the idea of assessments across all Parkway curricular areas. And the strategies you see here are really all about how can we more strategically ensure that kids are have assessments that are cross-content, interdisciplinary, rather than just isolating them. We want kids to transfer ideas across disciplines, not just within. But we certainly need some more strategies and action steps for this particular one. One of the conversations that we've had about our own Parkway curriculum are related to the foreign language questions. So we've discussed, I know the board has brought it up as a topic to discuss, and it's, I think, a very reasonable thing for us to be talking about is how should we be teaching students modern and classical languages? Should we teach them languages and in languages other than English? If so, why? Does our mission obligate us to do so? If so, how are they related? How is the speaking of another language related to our mission? If so, at what ages? Which languages? And what would be the outcome of this curriculum that defines success? Now, I should also say we could throw any content area in here. I'm the mathematics coordinator, but legitimately speaking, should we teach students mathematics as a requirement of our curriculum? Does our mission obligate us to do so? I would argue that it does. But when we look through the lens of our mission, what do we need to do in our own Parkway curriculum? Things that the state might not require, but that are required for us to accomplish our mission. So now I'm going to show you, actually, I guess, a couple of things you may or may not know about the state of modern and classical languages. What's the most popular, not post-popular, but the most widely used language on the internet? Anyone know? English? Anybody else think English? Anybody think it's a trick question? What would be another option? Chinese? Any other options? Contenders? Spanish? Here's an infographic that an organization called The Next Web developed showing the growth of languages and countries over the past decade. And let me zoom in here. Currently, English is the top language on the internet, and there are 536 million internet users in English, which they call 42% of market penetration. That almost half of the English-speaking internet users have been reached, so to speak, whereas Chinese is second, and there's 444 million internet users in Chinese, but that's only about a third of internet penetration, so there's still a whole lot more of Chinese speakers to go. And up here, it's pretty small. Given all that, it seems very fair to say that in 5 years, Chinese will be the dominant language online. So that quickly. They had a whole lot more users last year. Here's another. You don't do a 50-minute talk without a few videos. So here's a video that you may or may not have seen. It's a program called WordLens. Oh, and the vocabulary. Battery for the audio mic. So that's an iPhone app that somebody it's called WordLens. You just it uses the iPhone camera to translate text from Spanish to English or English to Spanish. Anybody have that? Anybody going to download it in a minute? I don't know how much it costs, but that's an interesting thing. And this one we need some audio for. If you don't hear this next one, it won't do much good. Talk to your neighbor about the implications of that software. Okay. No, that's okay. That's all right. Worst things have happened. All right. So you might be wondering, how does a software like that work? Which is a great question. And there's another little video about how Google Translate works, but the audio doesn't seem to be working. So we changed the batteries and we'll move right along. Does anybody here have Google Translate for their voicemail? Anybody here have that? Yes. Tell us about it. What does it do? Yes. Yeah, so my wife's driving home, and I don't want her texting while she's driving home, so she leaves me a voicemail, but I'm in a meeting, so I can't check my voicemail because I have social etiquette. And Google Translate takes what she says and, presumably into English, puts it through, so now it comes through a text message, and I can read what it says, right? Nobody has this yet, except for the gentleman? Doesn't that sound pretty awesome, though? Yeah, that sounds pretty nice. But what seems to be the main problem at this point? It's not real good. A good friend of ours, her grandpa, we were visiting them over a few weekends ago, and her grandpa was in the hospital, and her sister left her a voicemail about how he was doing, and this is what came through. Hey, Nicole, time just to let you know that I'm half of a lot. Wings Las Vegas game, but it would be able to answer the phone that often, but I've got to call me for doing fine. Everything came back negative, out what works fine. Second fine. They think it's probably a raccoon medication. And so on and so forth. Reaction to the medication is what that translated to. So it's a little rough, but it will get better. The whole question being, well, should we be teaching modern classical languages? Should we be teaching mathematics? It's a very different world, an ever-changing world. And we need to keep abreast of these developments. So, back here, all students will meet Missouri's required proficiency or growth targets on state exams. This is where we have things like aligned to the state standards, alignment to the state standards, the state map test, the end of course exams. This is where that will be measured. And that's the next page if you're following along in your packet. The third bullet for capable learners. All student subgroups will meet required proficiency or growth targets as measured by local, state, and national assessments. Of course, when we say all students in that second goal, that of course means all of our subgroups. We did, as a steering committee, decide to deliberately pull those out as a separate goal to highlight it, because that is an area of growth and need for our district. So what we've done is developed some draft strategies for all of the subgroups, and then the next few pages are about our different subgroups. I also want to highlight that throughout you will find, for example here, the Assessment Literacy Task Force. Who was a part of the Assessment Literacy Task Force that's in this room? Nobody from the Assessment Literacy Task Force in here? Oh, yeah, okay. Cool. Good memories. So you will notice the task force work throughout. So we have some strategies that we've started to develop for students with special needs, for students with ESOL, as part of ESOL programs, African American students. I just skipped that one. Students receiving free or reduced lunch prices. Then the next goal, measurable objective. All students will take the ACT and achieve a composite score above the national average, with the district average ACT composite score rising to at least 25, which is a very high, rigorous, lofty goal that we're going to be working toward. So we have a few draft strategies about how we would go about doing this, but certainly there are ideas in here that we believe could help inform this strategic plan. The next goal, all students who take an advanced placement exam will score qualified to extremely well qualified. We have some strategies and some action steps there. And of course, for all of these, we'll ultimately need to identify who the people responsible are and the timeline. All students will graduate, the next measurable objective, if you're following along. And all graduates will report they were well prepared in Parkway on the district graduate survey. That when our mission says, all students, and our vision says our students and graduates, that we do want to make sure that after leaving Parkway, how many Parkway graduates are in here? Yeah, we got quite a few. Excellent. So you would get the survey, and you would get the survey, and you get a survey. We want to make sure that 5 years out, 10 years out, that our graduates, do indicate we serve them well in preparing them for the challenges of an ever-changing world. A very important piece as we move on to Goal 2. You'll notice that only one of those measurable objectives was related to the state standards. We also had the ACT, the AP, our own curriculum. Again, from Schooling by Design, don't confuse the state's audit function with the organization's need for more direct, powerful, and credible measures of its purposes. We assess for mission-based goals and student understanding, in-depth understanding. We must design local assessment systems that measure what matters most. That speaks a little bit to the graduate survey, and also to basically everything else that's going to come in goals in the next couple of goals. We have to design things to measure how well we are accomplishing our mission. The state's job is to audit, just like the state has building codes for the new science wing. Who's been to the new science wing? Is it a building or a wing? What do we call it? It's a building. It's freestanding, right? The state has codes to make sure that's a safe, habitable type place. But by no means did that lock us into building only a certain kind of building. It's a very unique, very Parkway-owned kind of building. And we want our curriculum and our Parkway programs to be the same way, to meet the state's requirements, but also reflect our mission and our community. So that's where we go to the next goal. All students are curious learners. From the moment that we had this in the mission statement, a lot of people did have questions about what would that mean, how would you measure it, and I would say those are very curious questions. And I was being serious because, legitimately speaking, that is curious. So we came up with 2 at this particular moment in time. All students will meet or demonstrate growth toward district targets on benchmark assessments of relevant global problems and potential solutions. Those don't exist. We would have to create those per the previous slide. We would have to design an assessment system that would measure that. And then similarly, all students will sustain or improve the levels of creativity and divergent thinking they exhibited in kindergarten or upon enrolling in Parkway. These are not things that happen overnight. If we stick with this goal and have the appropriate strategies and action steps, we're looking at maybe in 5 years we would have a structure like this in place. But the creativity that our country has is largely what served us so well over the past decades. So let's talk a little bit about what this might include. We have some strategies here for how we would engage students in problem solving through context relevant to the ever-changing world. And then how we're going to monitor it, what would professional development look like. And some of these timeline pieces would definitely be the next few years. This wouldn't be starting immediately because designing an assessment system to do this is challenging work. But you will see here, Future Topics Task Force. Any members from that in here? Future Topics Task Force? We got a couple. Feel free to shout or hoot or something. No? Okay. What are some relevant global challenges? This is a book called High Noon 2020, 20 Global Problems, 20 Years to Solve Them. The author, anybody speak French? Jean-François, I don't know, something like that. He's actually from Luxembourg, where they're called Luxembourgians, apparently. He was the World Bank's vice president for Europe from 1998 to 2005. He wrote this book back in 2003, so you can do the math. We only have a few years left. 20 global problems, 20 years to solve them. Here was his ideas about the challenges of our ever-changing world. I'm no expert on any of these in particular, but I do know that I want to make sure that when my kids are my age, that there's plenty of water. right? I mean, there's here's some more. Sharing our humanity. And then, having written this in 2003, sharing our rule book, global financial architecture. He seemed to be a few years ahead of the curve on that. So that's one individual who was the vice president of the World Bank. I don't actually know much about the World Bank, but that sounds like kind of an important thing. Anybody know a lot about the World Bank? Nobody knows a lot about, I don't know. Anybody? World Bank? We should probably learn some more about the World Bank. Here's really our question, though. Regardless of whether there are more challenges, or maybe this is a fairly complete list, I'm not sure, how well do our current 12th graders understand and know how to respond to these and other challenges? That's really the question. Oh, talk to your neighbor. How well do our 12th graders answer that question with your neighbor? Or you can pick a different neighbor. Turn the other way if that just hasn't been going so well.
Now we need.
Perhaps, as I was on the way over here, I was listening to a radio story talking about how things like global climate aren't really at the forefront of everybody's minds right now. That things more like the economy, jobs, health, those sorts of things are definitely at the forefront of everyone's thinking first and foremost. And those represent additional challenges. How do I find a job after graduation? What further education should I pursue? So it's not just about massive global problems. The challenges our students encounter are also very personal, oftentimes. So then secondly, here are some strategies and action steps about how we would work on student creativity and divergent thinking to make sure that our kids are thinking curiously and creatively and outside of the box. Then confident learners. All students are confident learners. We have 3 measurable objectives here. We want students to improve in their confidence, self-direction, and persistence as learners, as measured by surveys of students, parents, and faculty. So we would have to improve some of the surveys we currently have, and maybe even create some new ones. Because you could certainly have a student who says, yes, I'm very confident and persistent, but the teachers say, well, not quite. I mean, we want to triangulate the data. All students will report that they are in physically and emotionally safe environments in Parkway. So we have a couple of strategies and action steps here. And we also, you look here, School Climate and Bullying Task Force. That was a big one. Raise your hand if you were part of that. All right, so a lot of information there, and we just basically made that one bullet, sort of do what that task force said. And then third, all students will monitor their progress toward personal, social, and civic goals and make adjustments to successfully meet those goals. That from the very beginning of the mission and vision work, we wanted to very deliberately point out and just make sure that personal health, social health, how we interact with others, how we're good citizens. These things all live within here, and this is the first draft of strategy and action steps, and I know a lot of you have expertise and passions and interests in this area. So then we jump over to the commitments, if you're following along in the packet. Goal 4, strong professional communities. We have 2 measurable objectives here. The first one, at least 95% of all staff members will report that their professional learning and collaboration has significantly impacted the achievement of their goals, and some strategies and action steps for getting there. That's what we'll be measuring. All staff members will implement strategies designed to address the needs of our diverse student population. Exceptional staff, a couple of measurable objectives there. Thanks. Every classroom will be staffed with an effective teacher as measured by Parkway's teacher evaluation model. The percentages of teachers, administrators, and supervisors will mirror our diverse Parkway population. So we have these 2 measurable objectives here, and certainly more room for strategies and action steps. And you'll see here, Teacher Evaluation Task Force, mentioned there. Who was part of that one? Got a few folks. Very enthusiastic. Yes? Nobody's shouting or excited? And then, responsibly and efficiently allocate resources. So we have 3 measurable objectives here. The first one, personnel, time, and facility space will be allocated based on the mission-related needs of students and in a fiscally responsible manner. So we have a couple of strategies there about using data to strategically assign personnel to buildings, adjust schedules, make sure our schools have balanced enrollments, fiscally responsible practices, all these different things. And one thing that came to mind as I was looking specifically at this develop and design criteria for access to education. What might students be missing? What should every student receive? Is the school meeting the students' needs? And I came across this news story, which hopefully will play with full audio. As you can see, it's not playing with any audio, let alone full audio. All right. Well, as you can see, long story short, this young man has an illness that doesn't allow him to get to school. So a little virtual robot with a screen has been hooked up for him so that he can drive this thing around school to his different classes. And he's basically talking about how much he enjoys it. And there's, I think, the principal talking about how good it's been. And there's him at home. He's waving. And there's him scooting down the hallway with the camera on it, and so he can see everything. All right. We're going to go ahead and move past that. That also reminded me that South Korea as a nation has a goal to have an English-speaking robot in every kindergarten by 2013. Just thought I'd throw that out there. As we look at these things called telepresence, where just like that student was driving around in something that took up a lot less room than this, through the halls of a high school. But they have English-speaking teachers who, they're the faces on the robots. Some of the robots don't actually have human faces. They are actually robots. And they're, that's one of their goals. And then to the question of when do students actually need to be in school and what can we get on the internet outside, sort of an out-of-school experience. Is anybody familiar with Google's art project that they just opened up? We have one person. You want to tell us about it?
I have to say it was recommended by Dave Irby, and I haven't looked at it yet, but it's supposed to be very cool. It's a virtual tour of famous museums.
Yeah, have you ever used Google Maps Street View? Anybody? Street View, you move around? They've done that inside some of the world's most famous museums, so that you can select the museum and choose the artwork. You'll see here in a second, there's the hall. You just click there, and you just move closer to the painting, and then you actually click on the painting and can take a look at it. Incredible amounts of detail, links to videos from the scholars who study these paintings. As we think about how do we get students who are at home and can't get to school, well, there's also how can we get our kids with experiences that they would never get even leaving school. You can look, it's hard to see, but I mean, look at the brush detail that you can look at these paintings. Any art fans in here? When you go home, check it out. It's pretty wild and crazy. Kids can even they can pick out paintings they really like and save them to their own little portfolio and leave comments about them that their friends can then go and leave comments about. It's a pretty intense project. So that also relates a little bit to, when kids are in school, what are we doing? When kids are unable to get to school, what should we be doing? The full day kindergarten work lives in there. The Connections Task Force lives in there. The length of school day, those things live in there. And also the efficient use of existing resources task force. That was 4 task forces. That should be a lot of people. Who was a part of those? A lot of people. All right. So all of the work up until now that's been done in Project Parkway is in some form or another in the strategic plan. And there may be something that we've missed that was pretty important. And that's why you all are here. Because I know that you remember and I know that you have ideas. Finally, Goal 6, all financial practices will be approved by an auditor. Parkway will annually receive the Certificate of Excellence from the Association of School Business Administrators. And then all capital improvement projects will be completed successfully and funding will be secured for future capital improvements. Additional measurable goals. So, in conclusion, and just in time, our purpose for doing this, just walking through this draft, is to make sure that everybody knows what the priorities and expectations are so that we can all align our efforts to achieve it. Everyone knows how success is defined, how it will be measured, and when, of course, when we get the timelines in. Everyone is involved in finding ways to achieve the priorities within the context of his or her own work and collectively learn what is and what is not working. It's about being deliberate in our work. So our timeline, we have this Project Parkway meeting. We have another one on March 14th. The steering committee meets to finalize this on March 16th. We have a first reading for the board on April 13th, a Project Parkway Town Hall meeting on April 14th. And then on the 4th of May, we're seeking board approval of the final 5-year strategic plan. There's our timeline. So, how you can help. One, keep looking over your CSIP packet that you have there, because I know we really breezed through it. For tonight, though, choose one of the 19 measurable objectives that you feel knowledgeable about and are interested in. How many of you already know which one you picked? Who's still trying to decide? All right, you'll have a short break to decide, to think about it a little more. We're going to go to that table after the break and collaborate to discuss the measurable objectives, brainstorm some ideas and strategies, record group agreements. Now, if you have individual feedback, there's a form I think you should have received when you came in, or it might be in the packet, actually. Yeah. No, it's not in the packet. It's up there. We have individual forms. They'll be on the tables when you come back from break. Excellent. And I do want to show you online what the individual feedback form looks like. This is what the feedback form looks like that'll be on the tables. You can leave comments by each goal, goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, capable, curious, confident, and then also strong professional communities, exceptional staff. Let me show you what the online, and this is a pretty, our technology guy, Larry Rigo, did a very nice job of creating a web. So you'll have this link, and it's on all the feedback forms. And if you want to leave individual feedback, you basically just pick, do you want to leave feedback about capable learners? So you click on it, and then you can leave comments based on any of the measurable objectives or on the overall goal itself. So let's say I want to say something about the ACT. So I click here, I leave a little bit of information, and then I type my comments. So anytime you want. Like they say, leave comments on the strategic plan in your pajamas. Is that what they say? I don't know who they are. Somebody says that, I'm sure. All right, so with a couple minutes to spare, we will go ahead and take a short break, and we'll set up the tables. So think about which one you want, and thank you very much for your attention and your help, because we need your ideas.
So go one, objective one here, go one, objective two here, objective three on the round. Yeah, yeah. I thought they were all different. They actually go with me. Nope, you're good. Am I good? Here's that. Grade 7 or now. Okay, now go two. Objective one. All right, Paul. Go to objective one. Go to
Okay, steering committee members, those of you on the Project Parkway steering committee, you need to find your name on the cards on the tables to help facilitate your tables. So, for example, this one right here is Dr. Lynn Pott, is right here. She's already found her name. So if you're a facilitator of steering committee, you need to look for your name on the cards because you're going to facilitate those tables. I have Charlotte. There's. I have Jenny Marcourt up here. Jenny Marcourt. Bridget Brown right here. Steve's found his. Kevin Mabey is right here. Aaron Wills. Eric Anthony. Going once. Tom Swoboda right here. Kathy Seitz. I don't know if Kathy's here tonight. Okay. Hi, Mary. How are you? Good to see you. Hey, Julie.
Study there, and then we'll come back together as a whole group at 8.
All right. We have until 8:40 to talk at your table, look over the strategies and action steps, and come to some table feedback.
You know I'm always already outspoken. Yeah. We're doing clinical Medicare reports, what you want to follow. And that's supposed to be the one that's closest out of the combination. Back up.
That's cool. No, that's neat. Please wrap up your conversation in the next 3 minutes. Okay. Yeah, we're on it.
Well, I think we got that decision that you're up. That you'll keep doing it. Okay. You told them we didn't have to know.
All right. Wrap up that thought. Yeah, no timer. We're on the honor system. So a couple of things. Make sure you jot down the table agreements on that green page. Remember, the yellow paper is for your individual feedback if you'd like to leave that tonight, but you can certainly take it with you as you think about this more. Or the website is on there. It looks just like this. You can leave your individual feedback there. I would say that leaving it online, Nikki really appreciates leaving it online. So everybody give Nikki a round of applause for all that she does. All right, I'm now going to... Oh, I also want to thank the steering committee members who were facilitating these tables. If you're a steering committee member, good job. Nice work. You facilitated and wrote ever so well, unless you delegated the writing, because your penmanship is questionable because you've been typing so much. I'd like to turn it over now to our Director of Communications, Paul Tandy, who's going to tell you a little bit more about how we're getting the word out about the strategic plan.
Thank you, Tim. First of all, before I mention that, I want to say one thing. Tim showed the timeline earlier, and then one of the first slides, he said, here's what we got in the next few months ahead of us. We've only got a couple months left, and this plan is going to be done, and I just want to congratulate everybody. I was amazed when he asked how many of you were here on the first night 2 years ago, and so many of the hands raised. Now, a lot of us couldn't remember what we did that night, but we were here. And you've stuck with it, and it has taken us a long time. But if you look at all the data from our work is on the website. If you look at all the work from, remember the 30 subcommittees in the first year, 30 subcommittees, and then we had 8 task forces, and all those findings and recommendations are being rolled into this plan. Now it's really important that we make sure we capture all that in this plan. So it's really important these next couple of months, but. It's exciting. When I look at the next couple of months, it's going to be hopefully approved by the board, and then we'll be implementing. So that's exciting. Next year, we've had a lot of meetings these past couple of years, and so once the plan's developed, our thinking is we probably would only need to meet maybe quarterly. So you can breathe a sigh of relief. And our thinking next year is that we would start meeting around the district. So each quarter it would be at a different one of the 4 areas. So communications of the plan. We are taking essentially the packet you have with you to all the buildings in the district. So all faculty and staff will be having a conversation about the draft plan, and we'll be seeking their input. We are actually giving every employee a hard copy and asking them to take some time to look at it, review it, and give us their feedback. In addition to that, we're going to be blitzing parents. We're not going to send a hard copy home to all, 18,000, but we're going to encourage them to look at the plan, at least down to the objective level, goals and objectives. But it's all going to be available on the website so that they can provide feedback for us in the next couple of months. So we'll be doing that and gathering up all the feedback. The last meeting of Project Parkway is March the 14th, right, Nikki? So we only have one more official full meeting of this group. So we will be rolling up the feedback at that time. We're doing the staff meetings at all the buildings here in the next month. So it's happening very quickly. And then we'll meet again on March 14th, and then we're going to pretty soon after that take it to the board. We have a town hall meeting in April to allow just the general public, anybody who wants to come and give it a last look. So it's going to happen pretty quickly. All right. Anything I forgot on that, Tim? Okay. So then we got some updates. Can we go ahead and do that? We don't need to take a break, do we? We can keep going. So we've got some updates on some topics. Mentioned the task forces that we did this past year, the 8 task forces, and we wanted to give you an update on 3 of them in particular. The first one is a real quick update, which is full-day kindergarten, and the update is it's happening. So thanks to the board. Yes. So thanks, first of all, to the task force that worked on full-day kindergarten and studied it, and then thank you to the board for being courageous enough to approve it, and the administration to finding the money. That's the way this is supposed to work. When we find these priorities like that, we reallocate the budget to fund them, and so I think it's a real success story. So that's going to take place starting in the fall. So as kindergarten registration is going on now, we're preparing for full day kindergarten. So where's Mr. Kirchhoffer? No. So Mr. Desi Kirchhoffer is our assistant superintendent for secondary schools, and Desi is going to talk to you about updates on starting and ending times, length of the elementary day, which was one of the task forces, and then also the boundary attendance areas and north area overcrowding. And here's Desi.
Okay, Tim, we're going to have anything up there? Okay. Or I could just make it as brief as Paul's update and just say, it's happening. It's going to happen. So, but I'll try to give you a brief summary. It's really hard to put in a capsule all the work and all the time and all the studying and all the reporting that's happened regarding these couple topics. But try to kind of give you a quick rundown of where it came from and then where we are right now. So talking about the start and end times, I guess I'll talk about 2 major objectives that kind of came out of the original needs assessment. And that's what developed was an outcome of this room 2 years ago. That was part of the deal when Grant Wiggins talked about, finding your current reality and doing a needs assessment. And so one of those things was talking about the middle school start and end times and lengthening the elementary school day. Those were a couple of needs that emerged out of the original assessment. Now, originally, this committee that formed, or the task force that looked at it, I want to remind everybody that it wasn't necessarily a fix-it committee, but it was to go out and find more data and then come back and report, and that's what it did. So it came back, so that task force came back with a report talking about the start and end times and the length of our school day. That task force was then reviewed by the steering committee, school board, and a connections committee. And all of those groups basically felt that there was enough data collected in that report to start formulating and make a recommendation. And what we were looking at in those recommendations And what came out of that is a recommendation of continuing a three-tiered bus approach. Seemed to be the most efficient and most effective way to get our kids to school. But what was put out in the community earlier, Paul, tell me when that was. I know it was at least in December, but maybe prior to that. Okay, I know we took it to the December board meeting for sure after the committee. But originally there was 3 tiers, and so many of you have seen that plan. Many of you have made comments on that plan. But basically, the high schools and a couple elementary schools were recommended starting time at 7:50. The middle schools and a couple more, or another elementary school was in the second tier at 8:30 starting time, and the last tier starting at 9:10 had most of our elementary schools in it. Each of those school days recommended was 6 hours and 55 minutes. And so what we received since then, since publicly getting comments and feedback, is that the end time, which ended up being after 4 o'clock for the 9:10 start, seemed to raise a lot of eyebrows. And there were a lot of comments that came back concerned with the length of that day. So what we were looking for is looking at some of that feedback, and so Superintendent's Council has been taking that in for a while and reviewing the comments and the concerns. And so tonight we have a revised draft proposal. And do we have a handout for everybody? You want to go ahead and get that out now? No major shift, but kind of really had to work close, because keeping in mind our current bus fleet and how many buses we can have on the road at one time in each tier, and how much time it takes to drop kids off at one school, go pick up, and then take them to another school. So we were really squeezing this in, and Will Rosa, I don't think he's in the room tonight, but I know he and a couple of his colleagues at Transportation Department have been really working very hard to try to squeeze the routes in between. So they've been really struggling with making an efficient system and trying to also take into account all the data and all the information that was collected by the task force. So it's a pretty monumental task, really, to try to create a compromise that fits everyone's needs. And the bottom line is there are still some things that aren't perfect as far as what we got from the data. But when we combined it all together and tried to accommodate as many needs as possible, and also take the community feedback and school feedback into consideration, this was the latest recommendation. And so it's moving high schools up another 5 minutes, and that's so the back end of the day doesn't have to go past 4 o'clock. So we worked on it, and that's also, I want you to keep in mind that elementary school day, we have about, the majority of our elementary schools end around 3:35 right now. And so if you're thinking about adding 20 minutes to their current day, would put it at 3:55 in most cases, in a majority of cases. So this was also trying to keep that in mind, lengthen that time, but not go past the mark. So we really worked hard with Will and Transportation to shave some time off those routes and pair up the right routes so we could end that day a little sooner for the elementary. So that's the most recent one, and also it starts it a little bit earlier too. So difficult task, but that's what's coming out, and that's what's moving forward right now. Will that be on our website? Okay, so that'll be up and running tomorrow on the website. Okay. Let's move on to attendance areas. Like I said, I'm trying to encapsulate a lot of information. Well, we'd like to take it to the information in your hand. We'd like to take that out. It is our next board meeting, March 2nd. That's actually, our next board meeting is this week, but we're talking about looking possibly at a March 2nd date to review this in front of the board. So that's kind of our timeline. And so, and just for clarification purposes, I didn't say this, but I know that it had been out on the website, that this is the proposal for coming forward for next school year, to begin 2011 school year. So make that clear as well. This on the other hand, is not. So maybe we can make that very clear distinction that the proposed time changes will be for the next school year, but any attendance area changes we're looking a little bit more into the future for making those recommendations. Taking you back to what the original task force was charged doing was to look at the overcrowding in the north area, and specifically mostly the elementaries for the immediate fix. And so the recommendations that came out of that, one of the first one that I'll point out was a kindergarten center, possibly moving some kids from a couple of our elementary schools to River Bend for a year to house kindergarten there. Seems like a long time ago since we were even discussing that, but it really was earlier this year that was on the table. But what it did is it created an opportunity for the principals of those current schools to really scramble, look at their space allotment, rearrange schedules, and also knowing that full-day kindergarten was coming and wanting to keep their kindergartners in their building, worked hard to make those accommodations so we're okay for next year. We're pushing the limits in some of these schools, and we're doing some things we probably typically wouldn't want to do with moving some teachers out of spaces and having some teachers move rooms, but they're making it work. And that did buy us some time, so we really appreciate the hard work that they put into that. But the other recommendations that came out of that task force, and these were more long-term, were that we're looking at attendance area adjustments and possibly using the current ISC building, the old Robin Hill Elementary School, as an elementary school building again. And then one of the prevailing thoughts that kept coming forward was kind of reviewing the entire district and looking at things holistically. So, taking all that into consideration, the Connections Committee kind of reviewed those options as well, knowing that a kindergarten center at River Bend was off the table for next year. We looked at the attendance area adjustments, and then also was considering, and this is still really focused in on that north area because that was the original charge. I want to keep going back to that maybe ISC could be used as an elementary building again. What came out of our Connections Task Force meeting, that the most responsible option at this point was probably to see what we could have fixed by adjusting some of the attendance areas, to see what would be available and looking. If the prevailing thought and the comments and the feedback we got from that group was that our first look should be at our current space, and the most responsible thing to do would be to look at some of our schools who may not be fully utilized and the ones that are overcrowded and see if there's a way to make those enrollments more balanced. So, our next steps, still taking, the task force reports have actually been really helpful. I know there hasn't been action necessarily on it, but they've really guided some thinking here. And so what we'd like to do is work with a consultant through February and March. Currently, our bus and our transportation system uses a group. They have the software that has our routing systems and has our neighborhood, and so they can start helping us out with looking at what possibilities we could bring forward to the community. So the whole idea would be to work with this group, see what their recommendations would be, and then review them, and then bring them out to the public this spring to review and have some time to get some feedback and hear some possibilities on what may work. Also, because of snow, we've had a couple little things we've had to readjust, but we're trying to get the group of North Area school administrators, the principals, together last week, and I know that we're going to be doing that again next week, maybe now? Is that okay? And so we want to also keep our people who are closest to the communities to talk about what their thoughts and possibilities are and what they're hearing from their communities. And then also the idea is, if we have any strong recommendations come out of our other group, to how do we bring that forward so each community and each school gets to see that and gets to be part of it and gets to provide their input throughout the spring. So we want to then continue that work into the future, look at what recommendations come forward, and then look at other possibilities district-wide and see what recommendations an outside group has. So, and again, I want to make sure that everybody knows that that's the implementation. Any changes are not for next school year task force. So anything wouldn't happen until the fall of 2012. Any other comments, Paul? No, you were let me go through this, but I want to make sure So that's where we are. That's the update right now. And turn it back over.
So once some scenarios are developed, there'll be ample opportunities to have, community meetings and so forth. But that's a kind of a to be developed once we decide, get some of the specific scenarios and options on the attendance areas. So.
One thing that we do have already from the original task force, I want to keep in mind, in the original task force report, we kind of kept a tab in the back. One of the appendixes is an ongoing list of things to consider and that the district should always be looking at. So we want to keep that along with, when we work with this consulting group, we want to keep that out in front of them as so they know what the community brought forth and what the concerns were from the beginning, and then also we'll share with them our current board guidelines and thinking about what has guided changes or not guided changes in the past. So.
Okay, we're about done. Be sure before we leave tonight, you leave the green sheets on your tables that had your group feedback. If you did provide any individual feedback on the yellow sheets, please make sure you leave those as well so we can gather those and compile them. I want to thank you all for your leadership in this effort. I know it's a lot of work. It's hard to do, but we're almost there. We need to plan some sort of a celebration for, after the board approves the plan, because it really has been a lot of work. So I want to thank you all for your leadership. Thanks to the school board, to Dr. Senti, to Dr. Marty for joining us. We're looking forward to working with Dr. Marty. Thank you for being here tonight. And I think that's it. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Is it still doing anything?